Welcome, everyone. I am delighted and honored to be here to moderate a dialogue on medical ethics between Rav Steinsaltz and Dr. Groopman. I will be posing questions about doctors and patients, about life and death, and I, like you, am really, really interested in hearing what they have to say. So I'm going to cut my words short and just begin by apologizing to both of you. My job as moderator is to interrupt when I have to, so please forgive me. And having said that, let's move forward. We have 6 questions that I'd like to deal with, about an hour, so if we can give about 10 minutes to each question, that would be great. If the dialogue is really going well, I might choose to allow it to go on a little bit longer, but let's begin. So Rav Steinsaltz, I'll start with you. When a loved one is ill, we tend to want to line up the absolute best medical care to get them the best doctors possible. The very best doctors. But the Talmud teaches that the best doctors end up in hell. So should we be looking for mediocre doctors who can heal rather than the best of doctors? I think most doctors do want to heal and don't want to end up in hell. What do you think makes a doctor an effective healer?
Well, let's begin with one statement, which is really, even though it uses the explanation of the phrase, they say that the best doctor means the person that thinks that he is the best doctor. Such a person is always dangerous. You will agree with me that such a doctor that thinks that he's the best doctor, that doesn't listen not to advice from his betters and doesn't listen also to the patient himself, such a doctor surely goes to hell. But no, that's a simple thing. But see, one of what the real problem about it is medicine is still not a science. And so a doctor is not a scientist. A doctor is, let's say, I don't know what proportions, but is made, medicine is made, one part of it is science, one part of it is art. So the doctor is an artist of a kind. And the third part is witchcraft. That is what. No, I'm serious. I'm not trying to make anything funny. I'm just saying medicine is. See, when you compare it to science, more or less science, like chemistry, which I once studied, or physics, it's a different thing. Medicine goes differently, and therefore, it's not that the best doctors go to hell. The first question would be really, is the best doctor the best healer? That's another question. So I want to ask the best doctor. So the problem is, who is the best doctor? And who is the best doctor is I won't quote the name, but I heard it from a person who I'm sure that both of you know him very well. He told me about a very interesting research that was made about in oncology. As it is well known now, it is usually now the medicine, they say the oncological, so how to say what to make the oncological treatment is now made more or less in the same way. I mean, the people don't make now new things. So basically, most doctors use basically the same kind of medicine. Now, they made some kind of research. They don't want to publish it, but the research was interesting. They tried to find out about the effectivity of the doctors. And it seems that when it comes to healing, there is a difference between how how many doctors are. Some doctors are effective as healers, and some are not. And it is not connected, not with age, not with knowledge, not with degree, not any. There is something. There seems to be an intrinsic quality about the doctor. The man that told me, who is himself a doctor, said they don't dare to publish something like this, and surely not to publish the names, because it will destroy the practice of perhaps half of the doctors. But they said that they don't know why, but it seems almost as they say in sometimes they used to say that some doctors go with a bigger angel, and the bigger angel is better at healing. So I'm coming back to it. So who is I'm trying to find the best doctor. I don't know who is the best doctor, and I can't sometimes find the wrong person. The wrong person because he is well known, because he is one. Some doctors, for example, are wonderful. See, what they said that the best doctors go to hell, even doctors that think very highly about themselves. It doesn't mean that they go to hell as poor people. Many of these people that think that they are the best doctors go to hell as rich men. See? And
I didn't catch.
They come what?
All right.
I didn't catch. The best doctors go to hell.
Sometimes it's rich men.
Rich?
Rich men. You see, they possibly
The
go
best
to hell.
doctors sometimes go to hell as very rich
I see.
men.
See, okay.
If I can interrupt for one second to ask Dr. Groopman, Rav Steinsaltz just suggested that all other things being equal in terms of pharmacology and treatments given, some doctors are effective healers and some doctors are not. And you can't say it's just the medication itself. It has to do with something about the way the doctor practices medicine.
Mm-hmm. The witchcraft.
That's the witchcraft factor.
The witchcraft.
What are your thoughts about that? What makes a doctor effective?
Right.
And do you think empathy plays a part?
I think that, first, it's very important in terms of a good doctor. I don't know the best doctor, but the good doctor, that you're starting at a meaningful level of competence, that you really understand what you're doing. And it's, I love literature, and other people now are introducing art into medical school and so on. I teach undergraduates a literature course, Tolstoy and Chekhov and Turgenev. But if you're having a heart attack and someone comes to your bedside and says, I'll talk to you about Tolstoy and Ivan Ilyich, but I cannot read a cardiogram, there's a problem. Right?
Right.
So we need to assure that there's competence. And I think one of the things, because this question is actually something that my wife, who's a doctor, and I have thought about and discussed, and I think a lot of it has to do with the capacity to doubt yourself, to step back and to think about your thinking, and to realize that often your mind will play tricks on you, and you'll jump to a diagnosis, which is what first appears in your mind, without restraining yourself. Or when a patient comes to you seeking care, it's not just in the textbook, as you say, but there's a dimension of healing. And that means understanding who that individual is, so that you're trying to do what is best for the individual and not necessarily what you think is best for yourself. So you need to have what's called metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking, and a certain level of humility to realize that as good as you are, you're not perfect, and you're prone to error because it's an uncertain science. In terms of witchcraft, I don't know if you read this, there's a newspaper called The Onion. It's Tzibelech, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And they once had a big headline. It said, FDA bans placebos as too potent. Okay, so there is witchcraft. And the placebo effect for a patient is very important. A sense of connection, a sense of uplift, a sense of belief. And that's the, refuat nefesh, refuat guf.
Yes, I think about, when I speak about witchcraft, you see, I don't have medical education, but I have some scientific education. And see, we know certain things. We know many of these things by experimented by what I call by error, mistake, and so on. But basically, do we really understand? See, the real work of those things? I'm not trying to be an obscurantist. I'm just speaking about it. We have all the gaps in our knowledge, which fill up with some kind of what everybody can choose what kind of witchcraft he wants. Say Jewish witchcraft, Indian witchcraft. Say, but that's witchcraft. So we say, I mean, it's a substantial thing. I'm not speaking about bedside manners or so.
Right.
And see, because it's in many ways these are important, and sometimes they are not. Sometimes you possibly, as a doctor, know some patients need to be slept. Yes. See, and
well, I think there's mystery, is what you're saying. There's mystery in medicine, that we can do everything right, and it doesn't turn out right. And sometimes we're not sure what we're doing, and we take a leap of faith, and we make an assumption, and to our own surprise, the outcome is much better than we ever anticipated. Well, so there's mystery.
That's what I'm saying. That in a certain way, the doctor. I'm saying in a certain way, the doctor who doesn't feel that he's the best doctor, the doctor that has questions or doubts, that is ready to respond to the cases as it is. This doctor is perhaps not admired by others, but he may be a good doctor, and at least because of his trying to do the right thing, he possibly goes to heaven. The other one that is so sure and knows everything and has possibly written so many papers about most unuseful things. This fellow, there are lots of papers
I'm in
like
trouble. I'm in big trouble.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I think we have a good concluding answer to that difficult question, and that is that if a doctor thinks he or she is the best doctor, maybe that's the kind of doctor to stay away from. I think there is agreement on that.
Okay.
So we're ready to move on to question number 2. We heard a little bit about how patients should choose good doctors. Next, do doctors have the right to pick and choose patients? Rav Steinsaltz, can a doctor choose not to treat a patient in need, or is health care an inviolate human right? Assuming, of course, that the doctor is capable of treating a patient in need, when, if ever, is it okay for the doctor to refuse treatment? What if, for example, the patient is a wounded enemy in wartime or a dangerous terrorist in need of emergency care? If I know how to treat that patient, can I walk away?
Well, you see, this is really a problem that has very little to do with medicine, but it has to do with general laws of morality and so on. The question whether a person can, any person, it's not really a doctor, say, can I go by people and when I can, or I suppose that I can help him, can I go and say, I don't want to? So the law of the Torah basically says, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, which means when a person is dying or is in danger, you cannot stand on the side. The question is, what what is the punishment for not doing it is a real question. But basically, a person has to be, when you can help, you help. The wonderful story in the Talmud is what is called chassidiote. As I say, a fool from Jew. He sees a woman drowning, and he says, "How can I, a person like me, go and deal with a naked woman?" So he's one that really goes to hell. So the same thing would be now. Can I say in some cases that I'm not helping? So the question is, are there places, positions in which I can abstain? On the other hand, look, let me put this in a larger way, because I know doctors are sometimes put in special positions. See, the fact that I as a person, sometimes as a soldier, sometimes as a civilian, sometimes I am about to kill a person. Does it mean that after I maimed him and I almost killed him, now I have to treat him and to revive him? So the question is, does the doctor not have a little right to shoot somebody between the eyes? See, because he is a doctor, can he not take something like the worst person, kill him? Just excuse me for telling a story. I'm really very bad at it, because I'm telling stories all the time. But it was a real story. There was a man that was in his time. He was one of the chiefs of the English intelligence. He was in his civil life he was ornithologist. In fact, Meinertzhagen. And in fact, there are several birds named after him. He became the chief of intelligence in the British Army in the First World War. Now, I'm not a very interesting guy. Anyway, he came obviously from a German family, but he was a really Englishman. And then he wrote privately and not privately, in the Times from the 30s on, that the most dangerous person in the world, the person is really the real danger to the world, is Hitler.
Is?
Hitler, Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's who comes to mind.
You say, now the point was, he planned. I'm just giving you because I used the same question on the wife of the French president. She didn't like it because of more or less moral consideration. Anyway, he said it once, because they didn't know that he doesn't have any sympathies to Germany. They invited him to a private visit to Hitler, and then he wrote about it. I thought, it's just such a wonderful opportunity. I will come there. Nobody will search me, because I'm an honored guest. And I go and I kill the man that I'm sure it will create a catastrophe for all over the world. That was his plan. And then he says, I didn't do it because an English gentleman doesn't do something like this. Right? Okay. Now, what do you say about it? Say.
So this story is similar to the other in that there's an absurdity on one hand for the religious man not going into the water to save a drowning woman because he couldn't touch a woman, or this chief of intelligence who had the opportunity to kill Hitler, and he said a British gentleman doesn't do that. So there's some...
And also for a doctor.
I think from a physician point of view, if you believe that within every human life there is sanctity, it's sacred, that even someone, Israel, for example, takes terrorists and treats them, right? You know, the stabbings that are going on, the shootings that are going on, the bombings that are going on, they don't discriminate. So because there is a fundamental sanctity to life, even lives that are threatening, dangerous, abhorrent, and so on. To me, the question is, again, if you as a doctor feel the emotion of anger or alienation or resentment or any of the other negative emotions that will cloud or impair your thinking, then you should not be the doctor to take care of that person. And so you need to take your own emotional temperature to make sure that you will fulfill the responsibilities and the calling of treatment, of care. And you have to be very tough with yourself, because if you can't, I mean, these are extreme examples, of course, but it's very common in medicine that, you may have a patient who, it's not even a question of difficult. I had a patient who was very anti-Semitic and very provocative and constantly pushing buttons and making snide remarks and so on. And it was very, very difficult. But as the young rabbi said before, one of the things where he said that the rabbi asks, what's the question behind the question? So one of the things a doctor asks is, why is a patient behaving this way? Why is a patient who's looking for your expertise and care and attention being so difficult and obstinate and self-destructive in a way? So you need to understand your own psychology, I think, in this, and you also need to try to understand the psychology of the person who's challenging you in this way.
Well, I'm just putting it as a question, because, you see, you put it, and you are quite right in a way. Sanctity of life is one takes a very high position in any kind of reasoning. The point is that there are times when you cannot and you should not take it as a number one consideration. You see, for example, the sanctity of life is, what do you do when you have to deal with a person that is damaging others? See.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Ralph?
What do you do when you have a person that shooting other people? Should you kill him or not?
Okay, so you have a person who's shooting up a movie theater. Should you kill that person or not?
Absolutely.
Yes, because so I'm saying.
But when he's shot and on the ground, and you are the doctor, you don't let him bleed to death.
The problem is why not?
Because at that point he's no longer threatening you. And he's no longer capable of doing harm, and you're capable of doing good.
Look, but I don't know if you are in that state of America or another state, you possibly will heal him and then bring him with great ceremony to sit on the electrical chair.
The next.
You see.
Please repeat what you just said.
No, I said you take the murderer. He's now wounded. You heal him and you treat him, and then with great ceremony you take him to electrical chair.
Well,
no.
Right. In this country, yes, in Israel, you just keep him in Beit Sohar for the rest of his life.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are solutions to that.
I'm going to take this question to a non-emergency situation. Does a doctor have a right to refuse to treat a patient in a non-emergency situation? Let's say the patient cannot pay. Or what if a patient wants to pay more for VIP treatment? Is it ethical to have financial considerations when you are dealing with taking care of a non-emergency patient? Dr. Groopman.
Again, this is something that my wife Pam and I have written a series in the New England Journal about money in medicine. And money is part of medicine. But recently, medicine is being redefined as a business, which we object to very, very strongly. Even the language is changing. Patients are called customers or consumers. Doctors, nurses, other health professionals are called providers, although you called Comcast and you're getting connected to the internet, or, you know, as though there's some preset commodity off the shelf which is given to you. And medicine is not business. It shouldn't be business. It should be a calling. Clearly you need to have money to run a hospital or a clinic or a laboratory or whatever, but fundamentally it's about human beings and the interaction of human beings. And I feel very strongly that people who are poor should receive the same expertise and care as people who are very wealthy, and that the society should have within it structures to be able to help people who don't have the funds, who don't have the money to access, and that it shouldn't be a multi-tiered kind of system. It's moving in that direction, and I think it's a terrible direction for the country to take.
Some years ago, I was asked once, they didn't repeat it, but they asked me to speak it was sort of a finishing ceremony of a medical school. They finished there, and they asked me to speak. And I as usual, I made it some kind of a faux pas. And I was possibly not very, very polite. But my point was, my conclusion was at the end was something like this, that I remember the times when doctors were treated with great amount of respect, almost like sanctity. I remember the times when people were not really didn't dare to pay the doctor money. They did all kinds of ways of putting the money in his pocket. The idea was that the doctor should be even seen as taking money. And I said, that was one side. And there was the other side, is the contemporary way in which the doctors are now a trade union. They're a trade union, and they protect themselves, they protect their rights, and it's their right. In the past, they were what they call some kind of a kind of a holy order. The doctor saw himself as a person that is a part of some kind of a holy order. And I said, the fact that now doctors are sued all the time is because they're members of a trade union. They wouldn't sue them if they would think that the doctor is something holy. So I agree that if the doctors could do it, if they could abstain from the yetzer hara of getting a raise in their salary, and they would deal otherwise, I suppose that they would have another relationship with the community, because the doctors doing it, making all these financial considerations, are in a way destroying their own positions as an extraordinary profession, and becoming as a provider of some services. And there are all kinds of services. Prostitutes are also providers of services. So
Dr. Groopman, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I think we have to resist that. You know, we're not factory work. There's nothing wrong with working in a factory, but again, because we write and work together, we wrote a piece about how now the big thing is to introduce Toyota practices into medicine. Toyota, okay, as though we're automobiles coming off an assembly line. Now, if we are automobiles, we're all different makes and models, right? And sometimes you fix the carburetor and the transmission goes and so on. And sometimes you don't even want to be fixed. We're not inanimate objects. We are human beings. Patients are human beings. And it is a calling. It's not a trade union and so on. And it's not, when you said witchcraft before, there's not even agreement about what is the best way to treat high cholesterol, or the best way to treat osteoporosis, or the best way. There's disagreement because it's a matter of values and trade-offs and risks and benefits. And so it's not a simple, formulaic, algorithmic profession. And I think money is, we're not naive about money. You have to have money to as I say, run a hospital, run a laboratory, and so on. But money should not be the primary focus of why you're doing what you're doing, because it's toxic, really. It's toxic to the care. And people then become commodities, which is precisely what we don't want.
Thank you. I'm going to totally change the channel for a minute and start the next question in the form of an anecdote. Abe Lincoln gave his wife a beautiful pearl necklace for her 40th birthday. She loved it and wore it every day, but over time, every single one of the pearls either fell off or was damaged and had to be replaced. And the string that held them together had to be replaced, and the clasp had to be replaced. So the question is, if every part of the original necklace was replaced, at what point did Mrs. Lincoln's pearl necklace no longer be Mrs. Lincoln's pearl necklace? Rav Steinsaltz, if I've had a heart transplant and a liver transplant and a bone marrow transplant and theoretically a brain transplant, and I've had genes snipped from my DNA and inserted into my DNA, at what point am I no longer me? We are taught that the body is mortal and the soul eternal. In this brave new world of biotechnology, can you try to help us understand the relationship between the body and identity and the soul?
Well, the question itself is really, doesn't come from Mrs. Lincoln. The question itself is a question that was used in the Greek philosophy, but saying that my grandfather had an axe. My father changed the blade. I changed the handle. Is it my grandfather's axe? It's the same question, just
right.
in a shorter way. See, look. But that's not. That's really the question is an old question, and the question is dealt with in different areas. But let's say about, as you possibly know, the human body, even without the blood transplants, changes its cells. Again, every few years, the cells are changed. You don't have change over. So after some years, you don't have the same cells. So I would say this is a question that should be put. No, that's a question that should be put for criminal justice. You should say, if you believe that everything that is about a human being and about the world is only physical. It's only physical. So the person of 10 years ago is no longer the same person. It's another person. If it's another person, that person, say, killed somebody. This new person didn't do anything else. No, it's really. I think it's a question. Now, if I believe that there is something like a soul, and this, I know I wrote a book just now. It possibly will appear also in English. I said that the funny thing about it is there are so many psychologists who don't believe in the psyche. So there are psychologists without, say, there are people that deal with the soul without believing in existence. But I say, if I believe in existence of a soul, so the question that the paths change one way or another way doesn't really mean very much. Of course, they change. As they change every day. The parts of the body change, the parts of the hair change, everything changes. So as long as it's the same soul, it has the same responsibilities. It is the same. It has the same persona. Otherwise, in fact, it would be a good question, because it's no longer the same person. But as I say, if I believe in a soul, which is something I can't put it. So far, nobody put it in a test tube, any soul. But if you don't do it, and you believe it, so this question won't be so difficult. Of course, the paths are changing, but the thing is not changed. And therefore, it is the same person with a different heart, perhaps with a different brain, with different blood cells, but it will be the same persona. Otherwise, it's really a different being, and it will begin from changing a small part of the body. Say, let's say that I have something put in me. A small part of the body was changed, so it's no longer the same person. But so I'm just saying that when you speak about the soul, you can't speak about a different person. If there is no soul, indeed it is a different person, even before that.
Okay. Do you want to comment,
Well,
Dr.
I think,
Groopman?
even though cells turn over and change and so on, there's a certain level of fidelity or constancy within an individual. It's interesting, a mutual friend of Dr. Aronoff and I, who made Aliyah and is in Jerusalem, works as a writer and a translator. And 20 years ago, he had leukemia. And thankfully, he had a bone marrow transplant from his brother, who's a lawyer. And they were a perfect match. And so he was cured. And I said to him, have you had any side effects or after effects of the transplant? He said, the only thing is I walk around all day long thinking about suing people.
Well, it's good.
So maybe we change. I don't think it comes from the bone marrow, actually.
Yes,
but I do think I, as a doctor and not as a rabbi. So we have the body, which is changing and morphing and so on, but there's constancy, and then we have the mind, which is essentially consciousness. We talk to ourselves in our heads off and on during the day. We have a sense of our identity. But that can be changed. It can be changed with chemicals. Now it can be changed with genes and so on. I guess the question to me is, where does the soul connect to the body and the mind? And as we're changing the body, and as we're changing the mind with drugs or genes or whatever, how does that interface with the soul?
Well, it's a question that's surely not a medical question.
Right, that's why I'm asking you.
It's a theological.
I have no idea.
It's a theological question, but you see, the mind changes. You take 2 slugs of whiskey, and you have a change of mind.
Exactly.
So you are a completely different person, and that different person.
Not completely. It was that story about the naked woman in the Talmud you're talking about.
Not completely. Say it possibly needs another half a bottle of vodka.
Okay.
I think we're going to, with your permission, we're going to move on. We're not going to solve this one.
I'm just saying that. Where is the soul? The soul is also, if you think about the soul as a kind of a pure thing that goes to play the guitar in some heaven. That's very easy. But the soul is perhaps as complicated as the body, perhaps more complicated. So therefore, the soul is changing, and the soul sometimes what happens with the soul, taking a little bit where it was whether the soul is taking mescaline or the soul mescaline.
Whether the soul is taking mescaline. I think we're going to move on to another question right now,
Sure.
because this is a lot to think about.
Okay.
Dr. Groopman, this one's for you to start with. When is prolonging life really just prolonging death? The Romans revived Rabbi Akiva just to prolong his torture. Doctors today can use technology and equipment to keep a person alive despite failure of multiple vital organs, despite extremes of age. Clearly, if there is a possibility that the intervention will be successful, it is indicated, but what if medical intervention is just an unjustifiable assault on a natural process? When do you think it's okay to say enough is enough, let a person die in peace?
This is one of the most difficult questions because of that uncertainty that exists in medicine. Again, several years ago, Pam and I were interested in seeing whether we could find how doctors decide something is futile, not worth doing. And in this day and age, there's a desire to have an algorithm or a formula that if the patient has this finding, this finding, this finding, this finding, then there's no hope. It's futile. It turns out that in studies that have been done in the United States and in Europe, you can say that for 1,000 people, 95% will die with these specific findings, these criteria, and 5% will survive. But you don't know who the individuals are. You only know it on a population level. And you can see sometimes some of the sickest people imaginable who you cannot conceive would survive, do survive. That doesn't mean that you go endlessly, but it is a terribly, terribly burdensome, vexing, complicated, fraught moment. And I think that you have to restrain yourself, again, not to be too quick or too impulsive, to believe that you know everything there is to know about a patient's condition who's in the most dire straits, and therefore can say, the end is now. Often you're right, but sometimes you can be wrong. And so it's a matter of judgment, and it's a matter of individuals. And in my own case, as a cancer specialist and a hematologist, when that happens with a patient, and the patient does die, I spend a lot of time thinking, did I do everything? Did I overlook something? Was there a mistake? Or could something have been done differently that might have saved that person? And it's a heavy burden that I think physicians carry.
Rav Steinsaltz?
No, I quite agree, because unluckily, being sometimes connected with things, I'm also asked about such questions in one way or another way. And there is, my great-great-grandfather was I don't look this in the right way, but he was a Hasidic Rebbe, and an old man came to him saying, I'm an old sick man of 80 odd. Rebbe, pray for me to die. Which is it's not a medical problem, but it's exactly the same thing. And the Rebbe was overwhelmed and says, what do you mean when a person can put on tefillin one more day? It is worthwhile to suffer for it 80 years. So this would be the same question. It is a question. So one of the questions would be also, you prolong life. The point, what is the value of life? So a person may say, I'm suffering. But the person may say, I'm suffering and there's no sense in my life. On the other hand, see, what is the worth of the life? Just if I would put it in a different form, not a religious form, just imagine this person has the most brilliant mind. I give him 5 more minutes, and in these 5 more minutes, he solves one of the basic questions of humanity. So, should I kill him before? So these questions are, when we make any solution, we say we can pray to make the right solution, and we never know what's the right solution. That's one of the problems or of the real answers for why the best of doctors go to hell. See, you give a person. He's not the only one. An army officer has a similar position. Sometimes even a rabbi has the same position. You have to give the person the possibility to decide about life and death, and that person is perhaps, whatever he does possibly goes to hell. Whatever decision he takes, he goes to hell. See, there's a big pity, but you see, in that sense, the doctor can take with him the army commander, the chief of state, and a fair number of rabbis to go together to hell with the same problem of, I don't know what the right answer is.
It's a very, very tough question, and it will remain unresolved case by case by case. For the last question, we'll end on a little more upbeat note, and I'd like to hear what the rabbi and the doctor have to say about eternal life. Not in the next world, but in this one. Rav Steinsaltz or Dr. Groopman, should death be seen as just another big problem for Silicon Valley to solve? Oracle founder Larry Ellison and others have donated billions of dollars to support research on human immortality. If they succeed, we, or at least the wealthiest among us, could be around for a really long time. Is this a good thing, or is there something inherently wrong about human attempts to try to cheat death?
Well, if I may say, if you go for the Bible, it seems that the right way is possible to live as long as you can. So we see early death and death in general, as some people call it. Death is some kind of a malady. It's a terrible malady. We don't know how to heal it properly, but if we can heal it, we possibly should heal it. So as a malady, as we spoke about sanctity of life. Sanctity of life means that you the more you prolong it, the better off you are. Now, the other question, which has nothing to do with that, is just imagine people live 70 years or 80 years and do so many vicious, nonsensical, idiotic things in their life. What would happen if they lived for 1,000 years? See, in 1,000 years, they possibly will make such an accumulation of stupidity and vice that possibly he shouldn't prolong it too much. But I am saying that is one thing. But again, it's not really an answer. I say usually we do believe as Jews, we do believe that eventually death will disappear. See, we say it is written in a book that some of you possibly read in the Bible, Israel, uvila mavet lanetzach. Death will disappear. So medically or miraculously, we believe that death will disappear. There will be other questions there, but okay, we'll face the other questions and try possibly to do with, say, with 1,000 years of life, possibly to do some better thing that we did in the 100 years that we had before.
Dr. Groopman, would you care to comment?
Well, I think, the lifespan is increasing. A lot of it has to do with sanitation, antibiotics, and so on, hopefully some element of healthy living and so on. I think what you see in Silicon Valley is mythology. It goes back to the Greek myths and other myths that somehow, you have so much power that you can change the natural order in a radical way. In a way, it's a form of idolatry. It's a vodazara, because you're thinking that you yourself are the center of the universe and that you can live forever and be eternal. And I think it's good if the money is spent in research and in improving lives and curing diseases and so on, but I'm very skeptical whether the human organism, or any organism, is biologically and evolutionarily programmed to be able to live forever. There is an inherent clock, and there's also an inherent accumulation of changes which ultimately, of necessity, lead to an end. And to my mind, you do everything possible to make life rich and full and long, but also to understand that we're not, in a physical sense, immortal beings.
Well, we can live. You know about it's a tree in New Mexico. That's called Methuselah.
Yeah, in New Mexico.
In New Mexico, it's about 4.5 millennia old. This tree, and it still lives. So it means when we say Yemei ki yemei ha'etz yemei ha'mi, so possibly, why should we imitate the life of a squirrel? We can imitate the life of a sequoia tree. So that's one of the things. Why we possibly Silicon Valley won't solve it. Solve it. Say 100%, but say we'll make life 10 times as long. So the question is you see these discussions, in fact, these discussions which are basically theological discussions, were discussions that were done in the Middle Ages about the first chapters of the book of Genesis. They had a discussion. Maimonides, for example, thought that basically anything that is made of a combination of materials will eventually die. So for him, Adam also had to die, perhaps in a longer time. Now other people said that death is not a necessity, but the death is. See, you can say, okay, human beings cannot do it. They're complicated organisms, but is life in itself self-limiting? Amoebas are basically eternal. Amoebas are basically eternal. So why cannot a human being be eternal? So I know there are all kinds of points in the middle, but it seems the question is whether is life in itself, say, in the basic notion, is life something that has to be finite, or life can be another format of life that will go on forever. It's the whole point, the problems that we have about it is funny because
Forgive me, I'm going to interrupt at this point
Okay,
because
good.
we have to end, but I think to conclude this last really interesting question, what I understand is that, Rav Steinsaltz, you're saying that we can aim or strive to be like the 4-million-year-old tree, or we can aim to have the lifespan of a squirrel, and it doesn't mean we'll be eternal if we aim to live as long as we can. And Dr. Groopman, you're saying that we are biologically programmed to be mortal. So that's something to think about over your dessert, and
Yes.
I wanted to...
May I say what
course.
once a nice doctor was? I asked once. I got hold of a doctor who was by profession. He was possibly the foremost gerontologist in Israel, and I asked him, "Can you tell me really what is a good reason for old age?" See, because all the reasons that they give, medical reasons for the old age, are usually very, very cyclical answers. They say that these things collapse because the mechanism doesn't revive, and it doesn't revive because you become old, and so it's really circular. And so nicely enough, the person says to me, he gave me an answer, not a medical answer. He says, I don't know the medical thing, but he say, I think that God made old age in order that it will be easier for us to collapse slowly and to go into the next world in a more peaceful mind.
I will just repeat what Rav Steinsaltz just said in case you didn't catch it. He said he asked a gerontologist, what's the benefit of old age? And the answer was that it allows you to enter the next world a little more peacefully, because in youth we're all in turmoil and everything, and things kind of slow down, so it allows you to enter the next world in a more peaceful manner. Yes. Did I catch that? Anyway, thank you for your attention, and good night.
So I really like it.